Extremes, extreme people. How did we get them? James Comey, not an extreme person, but kind of a goober. How did we end up with him? And finally, something really, really impressive, maybe as impressive as me. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. You ever heard of ancient Sparta? I mean, of course you have, right? Everybody has heard on some level of Sparta. Sparta, Athens, Peloponnesian War, Sparta, the military state. You know, you've seen the movie 300. Bunch of dudes with spears and shields and rippling abs fighting Persians, the Spartans. Everyone knows. Well, the Spartans had something interesting. They're fascinating people. People have studied them forever. I love them. Dudes love Sparta. They were all about military life. Now, I don't mean fans. Look, we strongly encourage it. I mean, if you were a dude, you were going to be in the military. They didn't really view anything else as a priority at all. And everything in their society was geared towards raising military super soldiers. They're the ultimate experiment. Can you raise a military super soldier? Even their women, the Spartan women were supposed to be some of the hottest chicks in the history of mankind because they were physical fitness freaks, because they believed fit women would raise stronger men, would produce stronger kids. Every part of their society was for that. And the part of Sparta that fascinates me the most, especially now that I'm a dad, is 7 years old. If you were a Spartan boy, they took you from your parents, from your mother really, because dad was in the military. They took you from your mother at 7 years old. Not for a weekend. You're gone. Bye, Mom. And the training and beatings and extremely harsh military education began at 7 years old. We look at all the Spartan military accomplishments, and there are many. And even back in their time, the people who lived in their time were scared to death of them. Sparta was famous for maybe the coolest thing about them. They didn't even have a wall around their city. Every city had a wall, not Sparta. Sparta's attitude was, oh, please, give it a shot. And nobody really did. How did they get so great? Well, extremes. They created an extreme environment. Extreme environments create extreme people. That's the good, cool part of that. The bad part of that is extreme environments create monsters too, all the time. Whenever you have extreme anything, extreme wealth, extreme poverty, extreme harshness, you will create extremes, and oftentimes not extremes you like. Why do you think radical Islamic terrorists love recruiting in places like Yemen, where there's no money and no food? Because it's an extreme environment. And how psycho do you have to be to walk in a movie theater full of kids and blow yourself up? Well, if you're going to find a young man willing to do that, you better go to an extreme environment to find one. Extremes. I have long worried about the violence from the left in the United States of America, not just because I worry about people getting hurt, and I do, not only because I think it's bad for the country, it is. I worry because eventually there is going to be an extreme response from the right. We're not there yet. I don't want to ever get there. It's why I've been so loud about putting down this Antifa, Black Lives Matter crap early and often, because I'm worried it's going to give rise to another white supremacist movement of some kind. We don't want that. We don't need that, obviously. Or even if it's not white supremacist, some kind of violent movement on the right. You allow leftist bullies to tear through American cities like this, murder and assault Trump supporters like this, burn things down. You step back and allow that for too long, don't think that you're the only power around. That's an extreme environment. I read a story this morning about a Louisville shop owner who has slept in his shop now for over 100 days just trying to keep his business alive, laying there in his shop with a weapon in his hands. That's an extreme environment. That's why I've been begging so loudly to stop this insanity. And that's why I actually worry about this new rhetoric we have. Well, not necessarily new, but they're ramping it up now about white supremacists. Do you denounce white supremacy? Are you a white supremacist? Well, one, let's be clear about something. There is no powerful white supremacist movement in any way in the United States of America. There's not, and thank God for that. I mean, we obviously don't want one. Anytime you've ever seen a white supremacist rally, it's been what? 5 fat KKK guys on the corner somewhere, surrounded by police officers to make sure all the citizens yelling at them don't beat the crap out of them. They're not what they were. They're nothing. You're scorned, shamed, as you should be. However, we're going to get one. Keep poking at people. Keep prodding at people. We're going to get one. And I look at how the press has treated groups like Proud Boys. And I'll be honest, I don't even know who the Proud Boys really are. It's just not something that's ever interested me. I'm not anti-Proud Boy. I'm not pro-Proud Boy. I just don't know what they are. I do know this about them, though. I have friends who know them. And I know that they come from all races. And they show up lots of times and get in street fights with the Antifa guys. Okay? They're not out there preying on innocent citizens like Black Lives Matter is, like Antifa is. You can disagree with showing up and getting in street brawls with Antifa. That's fine. But that don't make them white supremacists. And yet, we're calling them white supremacists. We have the American media on the national stage demanding Donald Trump denounce them as white supremacists. Well, they're not white supremacists now. Their leader's black. I think he's black and Hispanic. But we're going to get one that is if you don't clean this stuff up. Now, Donald Trump, speaking of this, Donald Trump was put on the spot on that debate the other night. You saw it. I already played it for you. Watch this again.
I don't know who the Proud Boys are. I mean, you'll have to give me a definition because I really don't know who they are. I can only say they have to stand down, let law enforcement do their work. Law enforcement will do the work more and more. As people see how bad this radical liberal Democrat movement is and how weak, the law enforcement's going to come back stronger and stronger. But again, I don't know who Proud Boys are, but whoever they are, they have to stand down, let law enforcement do their work.
Okay, why is Donald Trump talking about that still? I'm not trying to be too hard on the man here. Why are we talking about a group? I cover politics for a living. 4 hours a day, 3 hours of radio, an hour on TV talking to you every single night, and I don't know who they are. He doesn't know who they are. And yet the President of the United States is now answering multiple questions on national television about them because we're letting the media poke and prod until we're going to create something in this country that you and I don't want. Believe me when I tell you that. You want to talk about extremes? Creating extremes? Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee for President of the United States of America. I currently don't think he's going to win, but he's ahead in every single poll, some of these polls significantly, which means there's a good chance that Joe Biden, in, not very long, is about to be the leader of the free world, and he's putting out campaign ads calling Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old kid who shot those Antifa guys in self-defense in Kenosha, he's calling him a white supremacist.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared to specifically
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call him? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
white like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
That's from the Biden-Harris campaign. By the grace of God, Lynn Wood, attorney for Kyle Rittenhouse, has announced he will sue Joe Biden over that. Quote, on behalf of Kyle Rittenhouse, I shall sue Joe Biden and the Biden-Harris campaign for libel. I am partisan in 2020, supporting Donald Trump. I am a nonpartisan trial lawyer who aggressively pursues the truth to achieve justice. Put in your hearing aid, Joe. You will hear footsteps. Good for him. I'm glad people like Nicholas Sandmann and Kyle Rittenhouse are suing these people. However, there is a danger if we don't put a stop to this Democrat rhetoric and calling everybody a Nazi, a white supremacist, a militia, a white supremacist, a white nationalist, a Nazi, a militia. You hear it over and over and over again, and not from some jerkwater idiot on the internet. You're hearing it from the most powerful Democrats on the planet. Here's Nancy Pelosi.
As Speaker, over time, people have said to me, what keeps you up at night? The night of the debate, you saw what keeps me up at night. To see a president of the United States in a debate with a potential president of the United States refuse to condemn white supremacists, refuse to commit to a peaceful transfer of government, to ignore the climate crisis as our country is burning and our coasts are hit by fierce storms, to be there to crush the Affordable Care Act instead of crushing the virus.
Keeps her up at night. Oh, shut up. But that is dangerous talk. It is dangerous talk because it's creating the extreme environment. We have given leftists, why do you think we've had 4 years of leftist violence against Trump supporters because they're Trump supporters? You remember we kicked all this off with a GOP congressman shot by a would-be assassin who showed up at that softball practice specifically to kill GOP congressmen? That's how it began. You don't even remember it anymore. I hardly remember it. We don't think about it. This is creating an extremist environment. You point your finger at this group of people and say, they're Nazis, they're white supremacists, they're Nazis, they're white supremacists, eventually your supporters are going to act on that violently, as they have now for 4 years. And if they continue acting like that for 4 years, you're going to force some people in that group to become the extremists you've pretended they are. We have to stop this stuff now. And when it's coming from the most powerful people, you feel like, if you're some leftist, you feel like you have permission now, don't you? Hey, Joe Biden says they're Nazis. Nancy Pelosi said they're white supremacists. Again, what won't your conscience allow you to do to a white supremacist, to a Nazi? You can do anything to them, right? The ultimate evil. You're going to create them is what you're going to do. We are going to have a white supremacist movement rise again in this country. And that sucks. And these Democrats are going to be responsible for it if we don't calm this nonsense down. We are creating the extreme environment that creates some really, really, really bad people sometimes. I'm telling you, it's coming. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. Now, are you uncomfortable? Are you uncomfortable with the violence and craziness you see on the news? Probably. I would hope so. I don't like seeing American cities burn. I don't like seeing anybody in any political party get hurt. Well, are you practicing with your weapon? You're not practicing as much as you should. I know you're not because I'm not, and I prioritize that. But I'm improving because now I have an eye target and I don't have to leave my house. I don't have to go to the gun range. I don't have to spend $50, $100 on ammo every time I go to the range. I got an eye target. It's a laser bullet in the caliber of your choosing. You put it in your weapon. They send you a little target with it, and you practice with your real weapon in the comfort of your home. Go to itargetpro.com. That's itargetpro.com. Do not forget to use the promo code Jesse. Get you 10% off. We'll be back. Well, in a sane world, in a world that you would think is relatively normal, the former director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation giving testimony in front of the United States Senate about his conduct during an apparent illegal investigation into the opponent of the President of the United States, that would be like headline news. It's not even enough to lead my show, but it is a big deal. James Comey standing in front of the Senate, giving an accounting of himself and his FBI for their conduct is a big deal. Thank Lord on high, we have people like Senator Ted Cruz who are willing to ask some hard questions.
This investigation of the president was corrupt. The FBI and the Department of Justice were politicized and weaponized. And in my opinion, there are only two possibilities: that you were deliberately corrupt or woefully incompetent. And I don't believe you were incompetent. This has done severe damage to the professionals and the honorable men and women at the FBI, because law enforcement should not be used as a political weapon. And that is the legacy you've left.
Whew. That made me uncomfortable. Maybe that's because I know Senator Cruz, but I felt like that was my dad telling me he's disappointed in me. I wasn't even standing there, and that made me uncomfortable. You know how hard it is to make me uncomfortable? I don't even have morals or a soul. But I don't want to make light of it. I don't, because we do need to keep in mind, and I know I've said this to you before, but it is important that you remember, there probably isn't anything more dangerous going on in America than a politicized federal law enforcement arm. You can argue all day long about the FBI doing this, or should we even have an FBI or something. We don't have to do that. Let's acknowledge this. We do have a federal law enforcement arm, the FBI. They do have the power to destroy your life, my life, like that. It's nothing for them. And so you do have a higher standard, or should have a higher standard, to work there, right? To stay employed there, right? Shouldn't you? And the reason you should have such a high standard is they have so much power. And if they're going to be turned into a political weapon by President Barack Obama and others in the past, should we have them? I asked. I said it. I'm not apologizing for it. Should we have an FBI? Should Donald Trump break the FBI into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds, in the words of JFK, even though he was talking about the CIA? I'm asking, because it's hard to explain how big of a deal it is if the Federal Bureau of Investigation is going to become the enforcement arm of the Democratic Party. That goes way beyond even having the media in your pocket. You can't do what was done. You can't take a bad source who you know is a bad source, bringing you bad information, and you know it's bad information. You can't take that information, go to the FISA court, and get a warrant to spy on the opponent of the President of the United States. You don't have the freedom to make that oopsie. Sorry. You don't have the freedom to say what James Comey tried to say here.
How would you rate the Crossfire Hurricane investigation in terms of being done thoroughly, by the book, an investigation the FBI should be proud of?
I'm not sure I can apply a number scale, but I would say in the main it was done by the book, it was appropriate, and it was essential that it be done.
Okay, so you're proud of it?
Overall, I'm proud of the work. There are parts of it that are concerning, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but overall, I'm proud of the work.
Parts of it are concerning? You only put a little bit of poison in the punch at the wedding? Is that what we're doing here? Parts of it are concerning? You were the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. James Comey right now should be surrounded by lawyers concerned that he's about to spend the next 50 years of his life in Leavenworth. In a country interested in saving itself, he would be. Instead, he's doing a Skype or Zoom interview with the Senate. A little concerned? It was mostly okay. I mean, except for using a bad source to get a FISA warrant. Other than that, it was fine. we have got some major, major adjustments to make with the bureaucracy in this country. Lindsey Graham, I don't know if I should be excited about this or not. I guess it's television time. Lindsey Graham seemed upset.
I just want you to understand this. It's an ex parte event. It means that the cops have a duty to tell the court when they find things beneficial to the person under investigation. And over again between October and June, all the information found about the dossier made it less reliable, not more reliable, and you kept using again and again and again. And the question was their bias. At what point in time do you put two and two together? That the people behind this hated Trump, and the reason they ran all these stop signs, they didn't want to take no for an answer.
I have to ask, and look, I know this is uncomfortable. I do, because we like to cheer for our team, right? You know I'm hard on them time to time, but I have to ask, what date do you currently have? You can check your watch or your calendar real quick. Let me see. My watch says, man, my watch says October 1st. I just had to check my phone, make sure that was right too. Well, we've known about this for a long time. October 1st puts us, give or take, carry the one, about a month away from the presidential election. Why are we just now having this? What's the holdup? Where's justice? Where are the indictments? Where are the plea deals? Where's the congressional testimony? Are we ever going to get it? Or are we just going to get more 30-second, 1-minute blurbs from Lindsey Graham talking about how mad he is and what an injustice it is? Guess what? If nobody's going to jail, then it wasn't an injustice, because the next guy's going to do it again. And then the next guy's going to do it again. And then the next guy's going to do it again. You know why? Because every single one of them watched the first guy get in no trouble whatsoever. Stop telling me how much you care. Show me how much you care. Good grief. All right. Do you have any idea what our deficit is going to be this year? Any idea at all? I don't want to give it away here, but it's going to be a lot. That's in 1 year. People, you know how this story ends. You know how the story ends. You can't spend money like this. You just can't. We know there's going to be a correction. Go get a gold IRA from Gold Alliance. I promise they make it easy. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They're going to walk you through the whole thing. Please do it now. Don't do it the day after that bubble pops. Do it now. Diversify a little. That's all I'm saying. Go to goldalliance.com/Jesse. That's goldalliance.com/Jesse. You can even get up to $5,000 in free gold and silver coins. We'll be back. Joining me now, somebody you're probably going to recognize from Fox News, Fox Business, Epic Times, and he has a new book out there called The Divided Era, How We Got Here and the Keys to America's Reconciliation. Tom Del Beccaro. Tom, how did we get so divided? I have 1,000,001 theories. You're the expert. I mean, everybody sees we're like this and heading that way quickly. How?
I often use those hand gestures. Look, at the end of the day, every decision government makes, it picks a winner and a loser and someone to pay for it. And it sets off a competition to get those spoils. I mean, all our governments handed out over $10 trillion in the last 12 months. So there's a competition to get the money. There's, of course, the huge competition to be the ones to hand it out among the parties. And then everybody fights over taxes. So as I like to say, the more government decides, the more it divides. And it's really mathematical. The bigger the government gets, the more divisive it becomes.
Do you think the American people at all, I mean, put a percentage on it. What percentage of the American people realize the obvious truth of what you just said? That's the number that scares me.
Almost none. Because, Jesse, just think about it. And I know you know this. They constantly turn to government. In the old days, if your sidewalk was broken, there was something in your neighborhood, you got together and you fix things together. That's not the way it is now. People constantly turn to government and fight for it and demand that government pay for it. When government was smaller, there was the line in the 60s, oh, I can't give it to you, I gave it the office. Now it's, oh, I can't give it to you, I already gave it to government. Government crowds out charity along the way, and even that's more divisive.
Okay. Could we have stopped it? I mean, you look at, obviously, the arc of history in general, whatever free societies there have been, and none really like ours, it's always resulted in more government eventually. But is there something we could have done? Is there one big mistake we made? What is it, if there is?
Well, you know, the founders believed like you did. They wanted government to be small and local, and they wanted to slow it down. They came up with the 3 branches based on what Montesquieu thought about, because they thought that would slow the process. So whenever you hear this line about, oh, they're not doing anything in Washington, I'm like, oh, finally, they're not doing something in Washington to hurt us further. But the history of government, and our founders knew about the fall of Rome. They knew about the fall of Greece, ancient Greece democracy in, you know, the 5th century and 4th century BC. And, you know, during crisis, government lurches forward. So it lurched forward during the Civil War. It lurched forward during the New Deal and the court packing scheme of Roosevelt and his threats changed the Constitution. 9/11 consolidated Homeland Security, and you had all this spying now that goes on. And now COVID out here in California, COVID we've lost our rights. So the answer is, our founders said, Franklin in particular, if you can keep it, and as usual in history, we're not keeping it very well.
Is this a government school
However,
problem,
there are
Tom?
things that can be done. I don't want to be so negative. You have to grow the private sector, get people off government dole, and then have wise leaders like a Stalin reduce government expenditures in some area. Often, however, what happens is government has to fail in some significant regard, like in Michigan, and then the private sector takes over again and the budget shrinks for a while. So it often is crisis that can lead to innovation, but we'll have to see.
Okay, well, I mean, with all due respect, I agree, but I don't see any of those things happening soon. I don't see people on government assistance lining up to get off of it just because that's the nature of man. It doesn't mean they're bad people. When you're sitting there on the government dole, you don't want off the government dole. I don't see people getting out of the government school system. I don't see people even caring about the debt and deficit. Republicans do. We just blow cash like no tomorrow because like there's no debt crisis coming.
Jesse, think about it. The federal budget was supposed to be $4.9 trillion this year. And with COVID, between the Federal Reserve, they spent, and normal expenditure or additional expenditures, they spent an additional $5 trillion, literally doubling the expenditure. And you and I both know that that came at the expense, and at least in the short run, of the deficit. So the key, of course, is having a growth. Historically, you have to have growth above 3% in order for people to come off of the government dole. You saw the Social Security disability go from the 13 million back down to 10 and 11 million, and it was shrinking prior to COVID. So you have to have strong growth, and then you have to have wise leaders that will actually say, okay, we're going to reduce government. Where are those wise leaders? That's the problem.
How do we get them? Is it just things like, well, the American people have to want it? I mean, that sounds nice to say, but they clearly don't want it right now. Where do we get these wise leaders? I've actually argued before, and everybody throws stuff at the television when I bring it up. I think we should up congressional pay. I don't think you can get quality people who you want in government for $165,000 a year. What should we do?
Well, it's interesting you said that, because here in California, I've said many times, they have a literally full-time legislature, and that's the problem. Every day they're in business, they're pushing us out of business. If it was a true smaller legislature like Texas, you get less growth. So there are examples of that. And I had a really good conservative, Chuck DeVore, you might recognize his name, say to me, well, be careful if it's really that small, then you won't attract good people. And I said, look, I'll triple your salary if government stays away and only works a couple of months. So there's that notion, but also keep this in mind. In New York City, if you look, and I mentioned this in my book, The Divided Era, if you look at Central Park's one of the best run parks in America, but it's a private conservatory. Yes, it gets some government funding, but it mainly relies on its own fundraising efforts. And why did it come about? Well, because in the 70s, New York was really badly run. It's very badly run now. And Central Park was going to suffer. So they agreed to offload it from the government budget and let that private conservatory work. Eventually, we're going to have a lot of those examples as these governments go broke for the reasons you know and have talked about over the years.
All right, Tom. So do you think, look, I'm trying to be optimistic here. Do you think the emptying of American cities might actually help us become less divided? I don't want to be pie in the sky about it, but when I see that moving companies in places like New York City, they're turning people away because they're busy moving so many people out. These crazy cities with these insane protests, they're emptying as people flood to the countryside. Could I argue that could help?
Yeah, it's interesting. And in the same manner that over from the 60s on to today, you had movement out of the Northeast towards the Southwest, and that had a moderating factor. Look, there's an argument to be made that if Trump wins, the Democrats will say AOC, Bernie, Warren sector of that party, which is 40% of that party and controls it to a significant degree. They will say the morning after, whenever that morning after is, they will say, you know what, we weren't left enough. Biden wasn't a true believer. They're going to want to go even farther left. You're going to see historic voting among Latinos and blacks for the president in what could be a realignment. And then the Democrats, as they move forward, become the Labor Party, become less relevant. And there's your opportunity for Republicans to be true reformers, and we could get to a better place.
Tom Del Beccaro, go buy his book, The Divided Era. Where can people get your book, man?
Amazon works real well, or you can go to my website, tomdell.com. And I loved your tweet. It was on fire today about the racial issues and what a setup that was. So keep it up.
Appreciate you, my brother, very much. Thank you.
Hope to be back.
Did that scare you a little bit? The condition we're in, did it scare you a little bit? It scared me a little bit. And you know what? I'm still going to sleep like a baby tonight. Why? Because I have an ebb sleep. It's not more complicated than that. I know what it's like to lay down and not be able to turn your mind off, especially in times like this. You lay down and you close your eyes and your mind just starts going a mile a minute and you can't turn it off. Ebb sleep is the one thing I've ever found that actually targets the racing thoughts. Everything else is just pills or pillows or something. Ebb sleep, it'll calm it down. You put it on. It applies precise cooling to your forehead, calming those thoughts down, putting you asleep and keeping you asleep. Go to tryebb.com/Jesse. That's tryebb.com/Jesse. Use the promo code Jesse. Get $25 off. We'll be back. Joining me now from the great state of Pennsylvania, Congressman Mike Kelly. Congressman, what are we going to see on the House floor between now and the election? Anything? Nothing? I'm assuming just gridlock, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're spot on. What we are going to see is a lot of ridiculous messaging pieces of legislation that have no chance and heck of going anywhere, but it's going to be spend, spend, spend. And, listen, the majority is going to pass what they want to pass. They know what they put out there won't ever really become anything that gets put into force. But I've never seen people so willing to completely distort what's going on in the country as this group is. It's absolutely horrible what's taking place. And I think the greatest victim, of course, is going to be the faith and trust that the American people have in our form of government. Why anybody would squander that so carelessly is beyond anything I could possibly imagine. But, Jet, we're not going to see anything. We're not going to see anything that makes sense.
You know, maybe we should be happy about that. I'm glad you brought up that term squander and, you know, the destruction of faith. Do you think there are still plenty of people in Congress who genuinely are aware of that and care about that the faith in government is really at an all-time low and it's getting worse by the day? Do they know and don't care, or do they not know?
They know, and I think they care, but I think there's a lack of bravery when it comes to standing up for what you know is right. Because it doesn't fit in with the agenda that your party's pushing. Speaker Boehner used to say all the time, look, I want you all to vote with exactly what you have in your heart. I don't want you to ever think that anything that I put out is the only thing you can vote for. I'm going to tell you how to vote. He's never said, he said, I always want you to vote your own heart and your own commitment to the districts that you're from. This other side, I got to tell you, I have a lot of friends on the other side who would love to be part of some meaningful legislation, who would love to be able to stand up and say, not on my watch. But in that party, you do that, and you have a very short-lived opportunity to be in Congress. That's just the way it is. They don't mind telling you that. Except, Jesse, for these 4 freshmen that came in this year that have absolutely, or this session, that have absolutely run the Speaker of the House off her normal game plan, where she would really hold people tight and say, listen, I'm going to knuckle you under if you don't do it this way. This group has gotten away with some things that's incredible. Things that, you know, we would used to hear and say, oh, people only whisper about that in dark rooms and back alleys. They don't talk about socialism. They don't talk about communism. They don't talk about insurrection. They don't talk about being a vandal or being an anarchist. And that's okay, because people, as the Speaker so famously says, people will do what they will do. And I said, well, no, that's why we have laws, ma'am. That's why we have laws. So I think there's a lot of people on the other party that would love to vote what's in their heart and what's in their souls, but they know that that's a career ender. If you don't follow the party's platform, you're done. I mean, look at just, and you take it across the board. Pro-life is one that always has bothered me. When you talk to them individually and they tell you, well, my personal preference would be, but, and I said, no. Stick to your personal preference. Go to where you know is right, and go to where you know your heart is. Don't tell me this other thing. That's an excuse.
Okay, so they're scared of Speaker Pelosi. I've heard this plenty of times before, and you brought up, you know, if they stray, they're going to be run out of Congress. How? Exactly how can she get somebody out who got elected from their district? What can she do? She clearly has a lot of power because they're scared to death of her.
She's the biggest fundraiser. I think that this Congress, this legislative body has ever seen. She controls a lot of the funding for re-elections. Primaries have great importance to people, and she has the ability to take you off committees that you would be relevant on, and where your district would look at you and say, you know, he's doing a great job or she's doing a great job. They make you irrelevant, and then they find somebody to primary you, and then they fund it in a way that you can't match them up dollar for dollar. And it's very simple. They just cut off your lifeline. And people say, well, they can't possibly do that. I said, you know what? Not only can they do it, she does do it. She does it regularly. She does it in a way that other people don't see it coming, other than that member that's fallen out of favor. And then it happens very quickly. Although, again, this group that came in, this freshman group that came in, I've never seen a group that's pushed back with success the way they have. But they have some allies over in the Senate that help them out quite a bit too, with with Bernie Sanders pushing. He's got a lot of money that they push around. Jess, it's always the same thing, right? Follow the money. You follow the money, you're going to find out where the problem is. That's just life. I just know in my life, if you think something's not right, you say, I can't understand why this would go this way. I know this person really well. Why would they make this kind of decision? Say, just follow the money. It's that simple, because you can cut them off. You can keep them from being able to function.
Well, Congressman, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually think I'd rather have Nancy Pelosi running her party than those 4 nutball congressmen you keep bringing up, that radical freshman group. But however, I mean, look, time is what it is. She's really old and they're really not. Are they the future?
I sure as heck hope not, but at least in the districts they represent, they're the future. And I would like to think that somehow there's a coalition among people who are good to say this is bad. This is bad policy. They're gaining enough influence that they can pressure legislation to the forefront that you and I would say, oh my God, this is not anything we've ever seen before. And surely the American people won't sit back and allow this to happen. And then you see it happen and said, why is it happening? And I tell people all the time, look, if you're not paying attention at every election that you have, and especially in school boards for public schools, if you're not watching who it is that's going in and driving policy, whether it be curriculum or textbooks, and all the way up to the top now of the federal government, going through the state and then the federal government, if you're not watching that, just keep in mind, these people just don't go in and sit down. They are elected. And sometimes they're elected by very skinny margins, or very few people participate in the election, which I think is even a greater offense as a citizen. Why would you turn your back on 1.5 million people in uniform that gave their lives to give you the right to vote? And then you say, I don't care about voting. My vote doesn't count. I said, that's probably the truest statement you can make. If you don't vote, your vote doesn't count. But you've turned your back on people that gave their lives to give you the right to do that. And I just think right now the country needs to wake the hell up in understanding what we're losing because we don't participate with the level that we should and with the passion that we should.
Congressman, school board, I'm so glad you brought this up. I feel like so many people don't know how to get involved. They don't feel like they should get involved, or they just don't know where to go. Would you recommend people run for school board? Everybody can't be a congressman. Maybe that is the most important job locally. Would you recommend people run, people go to meetings more?
It is singularly the greatest position that you can have as a citizen, as a private citizen. Yes, I would ask anybody who's out there who's concerned about the future of our country. From the 50s on, Jess, we all of a sudden turned over to an altogether different group of people. After these heroes came back from World War II, after they were able to bring peace to the entire world, not just the United States, all of a sudden we took for granted that things are gonna be okay. I've sat on the school board for 4 years, and I would just tell you this, if the main reason you're getting on the school board is because you don't like the current football coach or basketball coach, don't go on the school board. If you're going on the school board because you don't like where your kid has to walk to pick up the bus and the neighbor, they pick them up at the end of their sidewalk, don't go on school board. But if you're really concerned about textbooks, who writes them, what's the content of it, and what it is we're trying to feed our children for 8 hours a day, if you're really concerned about curriculum, and are we still doing the things we used to do? This Project 1776 by the president, if people don't understand what he's talking about, 1619 is who we're going to define America as, because that's the first time slaves came to the United States. I just said, I don't want to hear this stuff. What I want to do is celebrate who we are as a country, the greatest nation the world has ever known, and we're trying to push it down and say it was never that great. These people did horrible things. They aren't the people that I don't want to live my life that way. School boards singularly. School boards can make the biggest difference in your community as long as you're electing the right people. Don't let that seat open for somebody just to wander in and have an effect. You know what? I always thought that in my town, the mayor is an important person, but the superintendent of schools is by far the most influential person.
Congressman Mike Kelly, listen to him, people. Do as he says. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Jess. Thank you. Let's go out and win.
We'll be back. I don't know anything about art. I know you're going to find that shocking. As much of a cultural Renaissance man as I am, I can't draw, sing, dance, anything artistic. I can't do it, and nobody in my family can do it. We are a family completely devoid of any artistic talent whatsoever. And to be honest, I don't have much use for art. I see these art museums and such, and I look at paintings, and I think, it's nice, it's fine. I mean, does anyone know where I get some nachos? It's fine. However, some of these street artists, I don't know if it's fair to call this guy that because I don't know anything about him. Some of these people do stuff that is unbelievable. I saw this video. Someone sent me this video this morning, and I thought, oh my goodness, I've got to get this on my show. Check this out. That is stupid talented. That is so, the weirdest part was the foot hanging off the edge. You see that? I do my own effects on the show. The foot hanging off the edge. All right. We got a cool special for you tomorrow. I'll see you then.